Okay, this is what we're getting into today. This is the brain, the body, and behaviors. So I want to introduce to you today Levi Campbell. I actually met him because we both live in the same town and I was in need of resources. And so I was connected with Levi, and for that season and for what I needed, he provided support in a way I didn't know existed. So for me, that was a powerful tool as a parent. And it was also a remembrance of, how do I, even though that's not me right now, how do I get that out? So I invited him along. I am Corina Hoenshell with Be Strong Families. I'm a trainer and on the marketing team, and I love connecting people with resources and information that helps them show up as their best self. And so I want to introduce Levi. He is employed at Chaddock here in Quincy as the attachment and trauma parent coach. He works with families involved mostly with the child welfare system. And as a parent coach, his focus is on helping parents live out their day-to-day life with stronger tools. Yay! To handle behavioral challenges with kiddos, right? And so Levi is trained as a Trust-Based Relational Intervention, or TBRI, practitioner, and has training in Theraplay, Dyadic development, psychotherapy. And Levi is also involved in the community and serves as the president of the board of directors for a local family planning healthcare agency. So all of you, if you can join me in welcoming Levi, he's going to take us on a great journey today.
Yes. Hello, everyone. I'm super excited to be here today. First webinar, so a little nervous, but I'm excited to be here with you guys today. Thank you for attending and showing up. And also thank you for inviting me into your space for the next hour as we move through this and kind of dive into what it means to parent through brain and body lens. All right, let's get started. So, flip up number one. Here we go. There we go. Okay, so we are going to do just a quick little deep breathing before we get started. It's really going to help kind of ground us. So we're going to do 3 deep breaths. I'll count them out. We're going to go in through our nose for 5 seconds, hold it, and then out through our mouth for 7 seconds. Ready? Inhale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hold. Let out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. In. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hold. Out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Last one. In. 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hold. And out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. All right. Does anybody use deep breathing? If deep breathing is something you do regularly, whether it be through meditating, just when you're stressed at your desk, I'd love to see a response in the chat as we move forward. Because one of the best parts about using our breath to help ground ourselves is we can literally use our breath anywhere we are. You can take the pause and you can do it with your eyes open. You can close your eyes. But when we start to focus on our breath, it helps us find the calm in the storm, and it starts to become more natural. That longer out breath that we do, so we do in for 5, out for 7. When we blow out for just those 2 seconds longer, what we're doing is triggering our parasympathetic response, which helps to tell our body, you're safe, it's okay to calm down. Because when we're running, when we're scared, we do deep, shallow breaths, or shallow breaths, not deep.
Mm-hmm. I want to bring up in the chat because you asked. And so a lot of people said, yes, that they do it, but maybe not on a regular basis. Yep. All the time. Micah says toads. Sarah says stressed and at bedtime. It helps me relax. Daily through my job. Definitely feel this when it's stressed at work. Use it to calm my breathing down. When I feel off in various situations, focus on slowing down breathing, but not the length of time inhaling or exhaling. Use deep breathing when I feel stressed, anxious, or just need to restart, and it helps me fall asleep at night.
Love it.
Yes.
I love that you guys are that you guys use this, because it's free, and like I said, you can incorporate it anywhere. All right. So as we move through this, because we're webinar style, I can't see you. I can only see Corina while we're talking. So I encourage you to use that chat box. Corina will pop up and we'll talk about it if you have questions. I love the engagement. It lets me know that we're on the same page and we're moving together. Also, because of our time frame, as we go through this, we're going to go a little deeper than surface level, but time doesn't allow us to get as deep as we would like. So I encourage you, throughout the presentation, there are links and resources, and they will get you guys those links later as well, so that you guys can follow up and look into more of it. Who am I? So I started out as a caseworker, and I was a caseworker for about 4.5 years. And then when the parent coach position was created about 2.5 years ago, I jumped on the opportunity. And in this role, not only do I get to help support our foster parents, our bio parents, I get experience working in our residential facility, our schools, and as Corina said, I am a TBRI practitioner. So the fun stuff, my wife and I just had a newborn son. He's 14 weeks old today. Already cried about it, so we'll be okay. I have 2 dogs and 2 cats who I love so very much. And then I love to read and watch reality TV shows. That's the way I decompress. And so part of this, my why and how I got into, or why I fell in love with this position is because as a caseworker, I remember sitting there in front of parents and foster parents, and them asking for help with behaviors, and I didn't have the answers. And I don't have all the answers now, but I have a whole lot more, and I stand on the shoulder of giants, and we get to help families in a way we've never been able to before. So Foster Care Month, I want to say thank you to the foster parents that showed up today, the child welfare people that showed up today, the volunteers that showed up. My mom's here and she's not in child welfare, so yay for that. I appreciate you all being here and opening your hearts and homes to children in need. All right, so here we go. Let's meet Timmy. We're gonna follow through and talk about Timmy throughout the training. So it's a dark and rainy day. Timmy arrives home from school or daycare and drops his backpack on the ground and starts going to the kitchen. You remind Timmy that his backpack definitely does not belong on the floor in the front of your door and it needs to be hung up. Timmy flips his lid. Timmy is crying, yelling, stomping around, saying he doesn't even know where his book bag is supposed to go. You're left standing there thinking, what just happened? We just got home. Where is all this coming from? In that moment, you think to yourself, he knows that's not where his book bag goes, and he definitely knows where it's supposed to be. So you tell him, if you don't stop your fit and you pick up your book bag, there'll be no dessert after supper, and you're going to go straight to bed. Timmy is now even more upset. You spend the next 20, 30 minutes in a power struggle, not over just the book bag, but now dessert and bedtime after supper. Does that sound familiar to anybody here today? Any of those things? The little things.
Let's start off by saying yes.
Yes. Yes.
That was so close to home. Thanks for that, Levi.
Yes.
Yes, there are people in the chat saying absolutely and yes as well. So I think we are
yes,
all
of course. Yes. Okay. The brain. So the brain has 3 basic parts that we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about the brain stem, the limbic system, and the cortex. We're going to really hit on the brain stem. Some things that are fascinating about the brain. and things to know when we're talking with our kids. It's not until age 6 that kids can usually start to follow more than a 3-step command. So what that means is saying, go brush your teeth, go to the bathroom, pick up your toys, and then go to bed. Well, they've lost it because their brain hasn't been developed to hold more than those 3 tasks. It's not until about age 10 that most kids can start to follow a full 5 commands in a row without having any questions or support. And the thing is, kids who struggle with this might act out instead of asking for help because they don't know what they're supposed to be doing. So if you've given your kid 7 tasks and you go in and say, why aren't your toys picked up? And that was the last thing you said. Maybe we just have to kind of prompt and break down what we're asking our child to do. Our brain really controls everything we do. And it sounds pretty like, yeah, I know, but from our emotions to our thoughts to our motivation, it's the electricity that keeps us going. Our brain scans 4 times a second. In 1 second, our brain is asking, am I physically safe? Is my environment safe? Are the adults around me safe? And do I feel safe? And when one of those 4 things doesn't answer yes, that's when we start moving into the brain, moving to back brain, which we're going to move into. But I see somebody says, huh, but I'm not sure which part the huh was for.
Carol, I saw that you typed that. Was that like, huh, like, wow, that's good, heavy information? Or was that like, huh?
Yeah, I didn't think about that.
Yeah. Can you repeat the feeling safe part, Levi?
Sure. About scanning for 4. Yeah. So our brain, every second, our brain is asking, am I physically safe? Is the environment around me safe? Are the adults and people around me safe? And do I feel safe? And the felt safety doesn't have anything to do with the environment or the people. It is that internal feeling of, am I connected? Does something feel off? One of the things in my role, I work with trauma and attachment a lot. And so children who have experienced trauma, like the abuse and neglect, their brain, that 4 seconds is a lot stronger in what it triggers because they're scanning the environment even more than typical. But even if you don't have trauma, abuse, and neglect, your brain still does that. Everybody's brain does it. Okay, so you're welcome. The brain. So I'm going to use a hand model, and it is, if you open your hand and tuck your thumb in, and then close your 4 fingers over it. That's how we do the hand model of the brain when we're talking about it. So this front part here is called the cortex. Our cortex is where thinking, reasoning, and impulse control all start from. The cortex, the front of our brain, is the last thing to develop. Our brain develops back to front and bottom to top. So the thinking, reasoning, impulse control, those things develop later in life, and it's our job as the caregivers to help our kids with those things. So the middle part of our brain is called the limbic system. So the limbic system is the emotional center of the brain. It's responsible for your behavior, your motivation, long-term memory, and your sense of smell. And then the brain stem. The brain stem is back brain. A lot of the children and families that I work with live in back brain. So we have to try really, really hard to move them to the middle of their brain. And that the back of our brain's job is solely to keep us alive. So it's our instinctive, automatic fight, fight, or freeze response. It doesn't know time. It doesn't know a real or fake threat. It doesn't know serious or sarcasm. It doesn't understand logic and time. Its job is, could this be a threat? Yes. responds. So when we're in back brain, and I say we because kids and grown-ups move into back brain. When we are in the back of our brain, it's impossible to access the front of our brain. It's offline, because when our brain is saying it's time to survive, we don't need access to the other things. And to think about that in context of us is, think about a time you are really, really, really angry. You didn't have, in that moment, it was probably really hard for you to stop and have that rational thought of, there could be 500 other perspectives, and it's not just about me. So yes, fight, flight, or freeze starts from the back of the brain. So if your back brain detects that threat, that's where it's going to start moving into, is the fight, flight, or freeze. And then as we our brain matures and grows, and we have that co-regulation with a regulated adult, our window of tolerance that we're going to talk about here in a little bit starts to expand. So it might be this little, but our hope is it expands. So it takes less and less to trigger us into a fight, flight, or freeze, because we have those skills to notice that it's going on. In Chaddock's book, Raising the Challenging Child, they use the example of, if you were to wake up in the middle of the night to an intruder standing over you, your brain is going to kick into back brain, get to safety. When we're in back brain, that's not the time to talk to your spouse about their spending on Amazon, or talking to your child about better behavior. Safety is the priority. So using that with us to go and talk back to Timmy. Remember, Timmy's from the beginning. When Timmy got home, Timmy had just had it with the day. He couldn't handle anymore. That one simple request from the caregiver of picking up your backpack sent him straight into back brain almost immediately. The thought of losing snack seemed to have made it worse, because now we're in a power struggle about the snack and the backpack. During times of stress like that, a person's instinctive back brain takes over in an attempt to keep us safe. So when a child goes into back brain, that might look like your tantrums, stomping around and stomping away, crying, running around the house with full of energy. And so when adults go into back brain and they can't access their thinking brain, it might look like they start yelling. Their body gets tense in the situation. They're rigid on how they start handling things. Harsh punishments start to come out, and compromising falls off the table, because usually we end up in this power struggle. So when you notice you're in back brain, and you can be in full-blown back brain and be like, oh, this is not good. That's the moment that we take our break. We take a pause. We focus on our own breath, because what we know is an adult that's not regulated cannot regulate a child who's unregulated, because the mirror neurons go off. So you yourself need to regulate, because some of the mistakes that happen when we start parenting from back brain is we start to use bribes to get the behavior you want. If you're good in the store, I'll buy you a candy bar this time. If you go to bed, I'll give you this. Instead of focusing on the relationship, or even worse, we start to ignore the child, or we start yelling back, and sometimes even resort to spanking. So before we get to those things, we're going to try and hit the pause. So knowing that Timmy is in back brain behavior, what do we do? Why is it important for us to know? So this is going to be a two-stepper. So step one is going to be connect, then redirect. So these two strategies are from Doctors Dan Siegel and Tina Bryson. And the next time your child needs help bringing connection and calm to their brain, try these things, because logic and reasoning, offline. Connection and co-regulation is how we move somebody from the back brain to the midbrain to the front of the brain. because connection creates calm for your child's emotions. And that's what we're trying to do, is calm their emotions, because we can't teach, we can't help them learn, we can't do any of that in the back brain. One of the best ways to disarm fear is with play. So playful interactions, being playful in general. Anything you do, the more playful you can do it with them, it will help with the compliance. So if we bump back to Timmy, in that moment, we're going to start to look at how we could do things differently now that we know just a little bit about what back brain is. So when Timmy comes in and throws his backpack, there's a pretty good chance that we already know something's wrong. So can we find ways, instead of immediately addressing the backpack that we all know he knows shouldn't be there, can we find ways to connect with him? So can we see him and say, can I have a hug? Could I have a high five? And when we get that connection, offering a validating connective statement like, being a kid is really hard sometimes. It is. It's hard to be a kid. Kids have their whole life controlled. The adults tell them everything from school, when they can go to the bathroom, when they eat, what they're eating. And so it's hard. And when we validate that, it's the good stuff. So okay, I'm gonna take a quick little deep breath for myself, okay? Okay, so once we connect on an emotional level, that's when we can move forward with the teaching part. The connecting part is not the time for us to talk or try and problem solve. That comes after we've connected. So connect before you correct. Work to strengthen your relationship before asking a child to change their behavior. I don't know about you guys, but I struggle. When I like somebody, it's a lot easier for me to follow what they're trying to lead me to. So when we make deposits into those relationship banks, even the little ones like that hug, that high five, before we say, we have to go pick up that backpack, we've already made deposits before we have to pull out that withdrawal. So name it to tame it. After we've connected, we've got to give a name to what they might be feeling. When your child can name the accurate emotion that they're feeling, instead of just listing one, it helps further calm the brain, because their brain can make sense of their emotions. So think about it. When I talk about naming it to taming, sometimes I get back, well, that feels really childish or condescending to say being a kid is hard, or to validate, yeah, you're pretty mad at me. But what I would like to reframe that through is, think about you're holding a newborn infant and that baby's screaming. That's not the time to say, like, you're hungry, but you have to wait while I go make the bottle and list everything that you're doing. That's when, oh, you're so hungry. Mama's working on it. Sure, our tone is playful. Or they're really upset because they're gassy. Oh, you're so gassy. Like it's the playful, fun tone. It's not condescending. We are giving words to what their reality is. So that's how we do it with our kids. We don't do it in the condescending, wow, you're mad. Well, that would make me upset too if somebody said that. But for somebody to be like, yeah, you're mad. Yeah. Validating is different than validating is different than being condescending. So jumping back to Timmy, you and Timmy are now connected. He's starting to calm down. You might now say, wow, you've had a hard day at school. And when you say those things, just let them sit there. One of the things is we try and jump in too quickly, but when we can label it, it helps him start to. So when we're able to label that, Johnny confirms, yeah, it was a hard day. Timmy goes on to tell you that because it was a rainy day, didn't get to go outside for gym class like they planned, had to stay inside and sit and watch a movie for recess. And because lunch was disgusting, he didn't eat lunch either. So he hasn't eaten since breakfast, and all he wanted was a snack when he got home. Because we took the time to connect, Timmy's now going to tell us what's going on. And now we can start looking at what the root is instead of just trying to cut the head off the dandelion. He wasn't trying to be willfully disobedient by saying, I don't know where my bag is supposed to go, and leaving it on the floor. His mindset was, I need that snack because I haven't eaten since this morning. And that's appropriate for his brain. I can think about as an adult the times where at work, I might be able to do something stellar. And tomorrow I might be having a really bad day and I can't give it that same energy. Do I know how to do it? Yes. Did I do it yesterday? Yes. But sometimes we have to have grace. And if we can give that grace for ourselves and adults, imagine what it would do if we can give that with kids whose brain is even less developed than what ours is. Click over. Relationships are brain food. Dr. Dan Siegel. If you are not familiar with Dr. Dan Siegel's work, great place to start, especially with like the whole brain child. Great place. That's where those two just came from. And that's where some of the other things we're going to talk about, like the window of tolerance, come from. Is anybody familiar with the window of tolerance? Have you heard it before? Maybe not at all.
Mm-mm. I heard you describe it a minute ago, so I feel like I know what you're talking about, but it's never a phrase that I've personally used. I do have a couple people say that they have heard of it. One is EMDR trained. The other one hasn't studied it, but has heard about it.
Yeah. Okay. We're going to talk about it just briefly. The window of tolerance developed with Dan Siegel. He's a clinical psychologist. Dan describes it as the state of our arousal or stimulation in which we're able to function and thrive in everyday life. So basically, it represents the energy of our nervous system and what the window is of what we can handle before we just lose it. So we want to stay in the middle in our window of tolerance. We want to be able to help teach our children how to expand it from little to big. When we exist within the window of tolerance, we're able to learn effectively, play, relate well to others and ourselves. But if we start to move outside of our window of tolerance, we move into hyperarousal and hypoarousal. And so hyperarousal results from the fight or flight response. So excessive activation and energy. This might look like difficulties concentrating, irritability, anger, angry outbursts, panic attacks, constant anxiety, easily scared or startled, self-destructive behaviors. Those are the things we're looking for to know their body is not regulated and it's not operating in its optimal prime. So the opposite of that is hypoarousal. So that goes from the freeze response, where it's the sense of shutting down or disassociating. And that can look like and present as like exhaustion, depression, flat affect, numbness, disconnection in relationships with people. And so we all have different windows of tolerance due to factors like significant childhood experiences, our neurobiology, what kind of support system do we have? What kind of system do we have around us in the sense of like our child welfare, our juvenile justice system? What are the systems that are taking care of our children having on their impact? So the size can change every day depending on what happened. Are you tired? Did you not get enough sleep because the baby kept you up? Are you hangry because you didn't eat breakfast or lunch? And now your tolerance is so low. If somebody says the wrong thing, you're likely to flip your lid. when we're operating at our fullest and we can expand it, it takes less for us to fall out of those things, and we're able to handle more of the stress and really just the things that life throws at us. So we're going to bounce back to Timmy and his body. Because we paused to connect with him first, Timmy told us he didn't eat all of his lunch and he was hungry. We're going to assume that he also hasn't eaten, or he didn't eat a snack, which, as we talked about, he's hangry. Hangry is realer than real. When we're hungry and dehydrated, window of tolerance shrinks. Keeping the brain and now body in mind, we know that he's not regulated, and he's in that hyper-aroused state that food and water is needed in. Timmy wasn't trying to be disobedient. He was trying to get his needs met. Once we get Timmy a snack and a drink, his window of tolerance can start to expand again to its full capacity. And when it starts to expand, that's when we can talk about the redirection and talk about the book bag. Now is the time to say, let's go pick the book bag up and put it away together. Or, you've had your snack, let's go put your book bag where it's supposed to go. So what are some ways to get Timmy back in his window of tolerance? So to move from chaos, the hyperarousal state, back into their window of tolerance, we can do things like deep breathing, like we did at the beginning of this, drinking from a straw, the sucking motion. It promotes the earliest forms of self-regulation, of sucking on a thumb, a pacifier, breastfeeding, heavy work like big muscles. This is lifting things, pushing the laundry basket from the laundry room to the kitchen for mom, carrying a book up the stairs, crab walks, really anything that kind of moves the whole body, and then blowing bubbles. Just like it is with the deep breath, that's what's going on there with the calming sensation, except you get the fun of watching your bubbles blow away and then pop. So on the opposite of that, tips from moving from rigidity and the hypo-arousal to the window of tolerance: dance and music. Get the nervous system pumped and excited. A rocking chair, chewy, crunchy food, hand washing. Hand washing is the sensation and bringing them back to the connection of their body, the here and the now. Tip: feed and water your children every 2 hours. That is one thing we say at Chaddock, and the first time somebody told me about that, I just cackled, probably for like 10 minutes. Feed and water the children every 2 hours. But hydration and food, so important. Because here's the thing, when we start to get dehydrated by 15%, we start to see deterioration in their behavior, metabolism, and cognitive ability. So that ability to get to the front of their brain to make smart decisions, that ability decreases the hungrier and thirstier they get. If you have a child in your home that has experienced abuse, neglect, or we'll even say neglect could also be like the hospital ICUs, if we're thinking about the 6 factors, rough pregnancy. Sometimes children don't know that the feeling they have is, I'm thirsty. So we have to remind them, you need a drink of water. Because by the time we feel thirsty, we've already lost 10% of our brain's capacity to function. And that has to start going back up once we get the food. When an infant gets hungry, thirsty, or tired, they become fussy and cranky. And before you know it, it's full out screaming, crying. We expect this from an infant when they're hungry, but somehow we forget that the same thing applies to our kids, that their behaviors are going to go downhill for the same reason. I'm starving, and that hangry feeling isn't going away. So children who have histories of trauma commonly have an elevated glutamate levels, and glutamate is a neurotransmitter that is associated with aggression, violence, and seizure, and it becomes more active the more dehydrated you get. So when your brain loses water, it the neurotransmitters and things that it sends out are for help. Truly, it amazes me how great water can really change kind of the mood that's going on with a kid just because they were thirsty and didn't know it. Before having a hard conversation, offer a drink, a snack, and a time to move or rest. So this goes moving your body. Moving your body is a really good thing to help regulate. But that drink and snack, oftentimes when I'm working with parents, one of the things they respond to this particularly and doing a snack and drink before those hard conversations is it feels like a reward for bad behavior. What do you mean you want me to give them a snack before they pick up their book bag? They know better. This is just saying it's okay. Here's the thing. What we know now is it's not about the reward. It is about literally rewiring their brain and regulating their body. I do agree with the comment that food shouldn't be a reward. Food should never be a reward, especially if there are food insecurities in the family or there's a fear of food. A lot of our kids in foster care do have that very real fear of, am I going to get food again? And so when we say no, even to a snack, dinner will be ready in 10 minutes. You can't have a snack. Seems very common, but for that child could interpret it as they just told me no to food and I'm never going to eat again, and I know what that feels like. So food shouldn't be a reward. I agree. We talk about yes baskets and stuff at Chaddock. Yeah, the snack, the food is helping with the regulation and the connection so that you can have those hard conversations. When we switch when we have that paradigm shift of compliance-based parenting, you'll do what I say because I said it and I'm the adult, to the brain-body parenting. It's a whole shift. It goes against a lot of the grains and things that we were raised with.
I want to add something. Andrea brought in the chat, there are some children who need to be moving in order to process information. I would venture to say there's people. I know as adults, sometimes I'm that same way. So knowing that sometimes as a parent, when you have to have that discussion about behavior, you have to take a child on a walk or play basketball or do something that their favorite activity is so you can connect. And I think we even, our therapist does like coloring. So we know, like my sweet girl knows, like, hey, when I color, I can talk about things that are harder because she's able to just kind of do those. So thank you, Andrea, for bringing that in and recognize, and part of that, those 5 protective factors and knowing your child, right? That knowledge one is knowing what is best suited for them. Because all 3 of my kids are going to need me to show up differently for that hard conversation. And so knowing how to best do that.
Yeah, I really agree. Hard conversations are good with the movement. Thank you for that. Yeah. Thank you for bringing that up, Andrea. So we're going to be wrapping into questions here in a second. So last tip, when planning the day or a special trip, plan activities that alternate between high and low. So what that looks like is when they get home from school, running off to Walmart and doing all of your errands might be too much. So I understand we've got things to do. Can we plan little breaks between those activities? Mom, dad, caregiver, can we take snacks with us so that we can be intentional? When we start to notice those hyper and hypoarousal behaviors, can we be proactive and say, let's get a drink, let's have a snack, let's do those things that help you regulate, whether it be breathing, crab walking. How do we build those into everyday life? Because it is a matter of every day and what that looks like. When in doubt, do a large muscle activity. Large muscle, we talked about moving the laundry basket, carrying a book, pushing, pulling, towing things. Large muscle will encompass it all, moves the body like Andrea had talked about, helps regulate our brain, gives us the upper that we need, the change of the scenery. So that could look like on long car rides. Maybe we're doing jumping jacks when we go to the gas station. And then maybe at the next one, we're doing wall push-ups on the car. How do we build those things into what we're already doing? If we're going on a long drive, how do we prepare appropriate snacks and water and bathroom breaks and all of that inside of it? So to wrap up with Timmy, we've connected with Timmy, which has allowed us to see the need beneath his behavior and figure out what's really going on. Again, Timmy wasn't being willfully disobedient. Timmy's brain and body were acting from a back brain and out of window of tolerance regulation. When we can get ourselves and our children back into our window of tolerance, we can access the whole brain and access the best versions of ourselves. Discipline is about teaching. Discipline is not about punishing. So that's a shift as well. What does discipline mean? When we see the need beneath the behavior and we start addressing that, we start to get to the root cause, and we stop with the cover up and just trimming the top off the weed, and then it grows back. When we see that emotion and talk about that, it's no longer about the behavior, because the behavior, their brain hijacked what they're doing. Once Timmy gets connected and you've had your snack, that's when you might say, "Are you feeling better?" And he'll say, "Yes." You can say, "Great, let's go pick up your book bag and we can move on with the day." Little Timmy's gonna feel seen, safe, and heard, probably give you a hug, pick up the backpack with you, and then you'll be able to carry on without that 20-30 minute power struggle, all because we took that quick pause to see that maybe it was something other than he's just trying not to follow my rules. Okay, that is all for me.
Yes, thank you, Levi. Thank you so much. So I do want to open the floor for questions. Was there anything that came up for you, something that you want to comment or bring into this space? Feel free to drop it in the chat, or if you do the raise hand, we love to hear your voice and Andrew can bring you in. Stacy said, not a question, but a comment. I don't work with children. However, I work with a few adult females who are incarcerated and in treatment for substance use or behavior modification. So the brain talk made a lot of sense, as we commonly see clients who have extensive abuse history and use this as a reason to get high, get drunk, or break the law. Being able to understand that more, their brains have actually been more impacted than I thought, could potentially still be stuck in their back brain and stuck still at a young age. Absolutely. Thank you for bringing that.
Could I just make a comment with that? So the largest growth of the brain in utero, in mom, because it's forming from nothing. So those trauma and experiences in utero matter. Baby can feel it. Baby can feel when mom is depressed and anxious and scared, or feels the domestic violence, the substance abuse. So when they're born, they're starting with all of that as well, even if they never go into substance abuse themselves. The body remembers what the conscious mind can't. It's a good point. Sorry.
Thank you. No, that was great. Several people, Laretha and Andrea both said, well done, good information. Ashley said, thanks so much for this amazing refresher, and asked the question, how do you work with a parent who has a really difficult time shifting from a discipline as shaming and correction to discipline as an opportunity to teach and connect?
Sure. That's a tough one. The way I believe you, if I remember in the chat correctly, I think you said EMDR. So I'm assuming probably like social worker, therapist. For me, I do it with like, we do teach, model, show. When you can show what it does to folks that don't believe it, it's an aha moment. And I say that because it was my aha moment. When I started, and somebody had told me over the phone, I was on call asking for support, and they started talking about the feed and water and doing large muscles. I was like, no way, this is silly. and it worked. And that was my buy-in. I was like, wow. So I think it's about creating those little pockets of relatability. What about their story can you tie into it? I would encourage you to read Parenting from the Inside Out by Dan Siegel, and The Connected Therapist. The Connected Therapist should really be called The Connected Parent. I think everybody can read them, and it's really about how we work from the inside and our own paradigm shift and moving forward. And I think that might be pretty helpful. I'm sorry, I kind of rambled. I hope that was helpful.
That's
you
great.
can reach out. That I think takes a lot more conversation. So feel free to email me or reach out and we can chat longer.
Absolutely. Julia said, I think the idea of connecting before we correct was mind-blowing and can be used with both children and adults. I can't tell you how often I use this stuff on my relationship with my spouse as well as my children.
Yes.
Yes. Stacy said, thank you. Veronica brought in great, refreshing information, well presented. I've also heard Dr. Bailey, conscious discipline. I think it's Dr. or Dr. Bailey. Christina said, when my daughter is asked to do something, she will repeat the last word of what you say. And if you ask her to repeat what you asked, she will still only say the last word, and she is 4.
Yep. So my recommendation with a 4-year-old, if you're asking her to do something, say it in the least amount of words as possible. 3 to 4 words is great. So if you're saying, please go to your room and make your bed, let's say, please go make your bed, 4 words. Or if it's about time, like how do we condense our long message to that, what she can remember. So if she can only remember 1 word, and so if you say, make your bed, and she only remembers bed, I think that's when you're playful and say, oh, I think you remember the rest, but let me remind you, make your bed, let's go make your bed together. So make it playful instead of engaging in like a power struggle of, you remember what I said. Well, maybe she did, maybe she didn't. Yeah. That's
good. Veronica brought in, start with doing active listening, repeating, saying positive words with parents, and then do show and teach. Andrew put more content in
Sometimes going back, when parents struggle with the paradigm shift, going back with the active listening, it makes me wonder if they're experiencing some kind of shame themselves. So is it about holding space for them to see what they lost or didn't get? Because sometimes trauma is not about what happened to us, it's about what we didn't get. So that paradigm shift has to shift to also recognizing, I didn't get that from my parents, and that's going to be hard. So it might be a reparenting conversation as opposed to, I'm just flat out not doing that.
Mm-hmm. There's absolutely something to be said. The part of what they brought into that space of shaming, blaming, punishing, disconnecting was those old interventions. And those of us, I'm not raising my hand, who are raised on those, didn't know any different. And now there's a new model, and we talk about it with some of our stuff with Be Strong Families, and recognizing, wait, there's an alternative. And it's empowering, and it is powerful.
Yeah.
And I like you said, I like the point when you're like, I got to see it in action. And so I showed up differently, or I got to like me, I get to feel it personally. It's going to affect how I show up. And so recognizing some of those ways to be able to bring that connection and bring that grieving, or, bringing that relationship and protection back into play, where so often we just cut it off and walked on. So thank you for that. There's a couple more comments. Thank you so much. This is a family I provide TBRI with as well, but it's only virtual. So these resources will be helpful, and appreciate it as well. Deborah said, Christina, my granddaughter, almost 3, often does the same. She is likely autistic and repeats to process what she hears. Not saying that is what is happening, but you can look into echolaic or Gestalt language learning. And Anna said, thank you. Great webinar. Thank you so much. Sarah said, do you have other suggestions about not engaging in power struggle? Maybe words to say or things to do?
Ooh, that's one of my favorite things to talk about, because power struggles are one of the easiest struggles to get into. even on our best days. I I think it depends on what the power struggle is about. Sometimes if it's like with our kid over something really silly, sometimes it's, yep, mama needs a break. I'm gonna go take a break and then we'll come back to it. And sometimes it's in our tone of voice. One of the things I work with foster parents about, or caregivers, is how they say no, how they give a direction. If you give a direction that sounds like a question, or you ask the question, do you want to put your shoes on? When it's not a question because they're putting their shoes on, you're setting yourself up for that power struggle. So it could be the tweak in how we engage with that. So maybe it's not the question, but it's, let's go get our shoes on, we're about to leave. Now we're setting the expectation and how we go about it, instead of asking, you want to get your shoes on, when no isn't there. But also when we say no or give that redirective, our tone, volume, and cadence matters. If we say no in a laughy or a high pitched tone, it doesn't send or register in the brain the same as like the slow, firm no. So there's a difference between stop doing that and stop doing that. You can be firm without being disrespectful. And so it could come down to as simple as how you're engaging in that interaction. At Chaddock, and you can see it in our Raising the Challenging Child book, there's a lesson that I don't remember which one, but it talks about changing the steps of the dance. When we as caregivers change our steps and how we respond, it forces everyone else in our system to respond differently. And it might be, I'm going to respond in a way to get you to go back to the old system and give in. Or it might be, oh, it's not a question, we're gonna do it.
Awesome. Just reviewing, we have 3 minutes left just to see if there were any other questions. There is a poll that just popped up, so if you would also go ahead and take advantage of that poll. I think the last question is also, I'm on board with the gentle parenting styles, but my husband thinks I'm raising a snowflake. Any tips for getting on the same page?
Can you say that one more time?
Yes.
Oh, the snowflake?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think well, the snowflake comment, I think it's very common, not just to your family, but I see it a lot in the people I work with. I think that you're raising a snowflake comment comes from our old style of parenting, and I'm gonna whoop your butt, I'm gonna blank, I'm the adult, you're the kid, you're to be seen, not heard. And so when I think the way society is going today, I think people think that the reason it's so bad is because parents didn't whoop their kids, parents weren't stern enough. But in reality, I think what it is kids weren't validated, kids weren't taught about like all of their emotions and moving forward. So I think the snowflake comment is one of those where you got to see it to know that it's working. They've got to feel it, because it's truly the science has changed. What we knew 10 years ago, we know so much more now. And it is really about how we structure the brain and set the brain and body up. We know now that the traditional methods of parenting are outdated. Yeah. Sorry,
Awesome.
I don't know if that answered or if that was a ramble again. Sometimes I just ramble and forget to stop.
No, I think this is, for me, this is a launching point for such a good conversation. So please email Levi, please get in touch with him, follow as well on social media. We are going to wrap up our webinar today with our amplify hashtag. So today we are amplifying the brain and body. So if there's anything that you would like to amplify, please drop that in the chat. We'd love to hear what you are taking away, what resonates with you as well.
While they're doing that, one last thing, somebody had asked, do I or Chaddock offer services for children or adults? We do. if you email me, which they put it in the chat, or if you send me a message on Instagram, I will get you the link, and I would be happy to connect you with some of the awesome people at Chaddock to see if we're a good fit.
Perfect. I love it. Andrew, you can go on to the last couple slides and we will wrap it up and share our final resources with you. So this Friday, if you kind of loved starting this conversation, we're going to keep it up with our spiritual vitality. And this is one of our Taste of Cafes. The theme is Bloom Where You're Planted. So it will be at noon, just like you come on here for a webinar, you'll come for a cafe. So we'd love to have you. It's about an hour as well, hour and a half. Kind of get a taste of what that feels like, as well as build that community and continue those conversations. With Be Strong Families, we are wrapping up our Spring into Vitality. So if you want to check out that link, he's dropped it in the chat, as well as there's a QR code. The next 2 events that we have before it's over, it's gone so soon. This will be Spiritual Vitality. And the fun thing for me is my mom is going to be the artist who is leading this watercolor paint and sip. So I'm excited to join in, bringing my daughter with me as well, so we can do a beautiful spring watercolor painting. That'll be from 11 to 1. You can sign up on that QR code. We also have our Social Vitality. So our last event to celebrate this year is our Escape the Ice Palace and Save Summer. It's a virtual escape room. So if you're looking for something to do, a way to connect with people, maybe try something you've never done. I've never done a real escape room, let alone a virtual one. So I'm looking forward for joining the group on June 9th from 7 to 8:30 p.m. And just a reminder of our webinars, the series of Staying Strong and Positive for Ourselves and Our Children is every Monday and Wednesday in English at noon, as well as Spanish on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And finally, I want to invite you to join our community. Several of you were asking, can I get this webinar later? And the answer is yes. So Andrew has dropped it in the chat. You can also scan the QR code. And that's a way that you can watch this one over again, as well as see any of the other ones that maybe you weren't able to attend before. So do share them with your friends and family. We do think that we're trying to put out great information. If there's topics and tips that you're interested in and you're not seeing come through, please drop it in the chat. I'd love to share that with our group, as we can bring new presenters and bring topics that are relatable to you where you are. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much for your time, your engagement, your feedback, your questions for